Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So today, early this morning, I did my routine exercises at the gym in my apartment building, and then I had this sense, this desire to just go for my walk. But it's been a while since I've actually gone out on my usual walk. It's something that was a part of my routine, but really just stopped because of a storm that came through and it affected a lot of the areas in the northeast region. Basically, not on the East Coast, northeast. I'm here in DC. A winter storm came through and gave us a couple feet of snow, and followed by sleet, and then followed by days of just complete cold temperatures. And with that, it feels like it's been ages. Like the the winter storm came in like in the latter part of January. Right now it's moving towards mid-February now, close nearly. At least when I'm recording this episode here. And I jokingly, say that it's like I feel like it's been ages, but I think that's sort of what I've been experiencing, what I've been feeling as I've been navigating daily life. And my initial impression with all that has been, okay, I'm feeling something in my environment. There's stuff that people are feeling across the board here in DC. And even looking online, like in Reddit, I follow specifically in DC just to see what's going on. And I've seen a couple posts that people made about the snowstorm and how some people express they're just being fed up and done with it. Some people even refer to it as like suffering, which to me really confirmed of the feelings I was picking up. Winter isn't always an interesting time of the year to navigate through because there's always this saying, the winter blues. Because with the cold temperatures, there is this tendency, understandably, to want to be inside where it's warm and toasty. Not like when being out there and braving the cold, which I'm sure people who live in like cold parts of the planet, or even think about people, for example, in Alaska and their lifestyle. Not to mention even like their perspective, how they see things, how they show up. I'm sure it would be really different than, comparing it to the folks here in DC, including myself. Different parts of the world experience different climates, and not all parts of the world experience all four seasons. And so that's interesting. And because of the fact that I know being here in DC, I experience all four seasons, I definitely appreciate it. Although I will also admit, I have my gripes about the whole process when moving through transition, particularly when transitioning from summer to fall, but really from fall to winter. Because after coming out of just being so used to warm temperatures or hot temperatures at times, because it can get pretty hot and intense here in DC, because you also have to factor in the humidity. And so even like transitioning from that, where it's like the 50s can feel super cold in that transition, at least for myself. But then when I get used to the winter, at that point, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in this. All right, let's go. So there's this theme of like this threshold and what's like the trend, and how my body can attune to and kind of calibrate to wherever is like the current like I guess, the wave. I want to say threshold, but really it's not the best word I would use necessarily. But just where I'm kind of tuned to. So that's why, depending on certain temperatures, understandably, transitioning from warm to cold, cool to cold, warm, hot to warm, warm to cool, cool to cold. Just thinking about what the body's used to. And so there's that discomfort that happens of transitioning. But then it's like there's a threshold for the discomfort. Think about, I'm sure, I don't know if you have, but think about a time you went to the beach. When you're out there, like at the shores, and it's depending on the time of year. I know I can recall experiences where I step foot in the ocean and it feels cold, so cold. But and there's always that initial part of like stepping into it where it feels so outright uncomfortable, you know. But in the experiences where I allow myself to work through that discomfort, then at that point, rather it being uncomfortably cold, it's just like, okay, it feels cold. I still feel some discomfort, but not as much as I initially did. So that analogy of the beach really kind of captures it for me. Like when I experienced going through the four seasons, particularly from summer, fall to winter, it's understandable the tendency of others and like myself of just to feel like, okay, I don't I don't like this. This does not feel comfortable, pleasant. But how I see it and why I mentioned that I appreciate it is because thinking about my physical body, when I'm used to a certain temperature, it's like there's this tendency to just be desensitized in some way, and it's just getting so used to it. Like think about the routines, for example, and why I believe like having some variety to do something differently, go outside, explore, to invite in the newness into my routines, because it gets to a point where I can get to the threshold of comfy, and that's not good because change is always constant. The change is the one constant, and if I get too comfy, well, when when the currents of life that are ever changing start to unfold, it may knock me out. It may knock me back, and depending on how comfy I am, and perhaps even resistant to change, I may have a very intense experience. And I'm just saying this because I've had. Think about that for yourself. And so I think for me, it's that variety is why I appreciate it. It's almost like I remember heard it share with me, it's like we have the extremes so that we can appreciate the opposite. Like those times of challenges helps to really help me appreciate the good times and enjoy them even more. And that for sure is true for me. Definitely. And it's why also for me, I'm at a place where I'm being more consistent and tuning into gratitude. Even let's say when I'm used to like taking a hot or a warm, close to hot shower, I take a moment when as I'm like drying myself, or even when I step foot inside, I take a bow at the water, at the shower, just sprinkling down on me as a way of just being like, I appreciate this because not many people have this to help me ground myself in the abundance that I have around me. It's so funny how, for me, I know I can get into the trap and limited view of abundance where I exclusively just think about it in terms of like money, finances. That's one aspect of it, but I have to be careful not to make it or feel like that's the only thing, the end all be all. Abundance shows up in many ways, many ways. And so for me, I have to be careful that I don't get myself caught into that pattern of thinking because it just ultimately it's just not going to serve me. It's not going to help me. I start buying into lack, and when I do that, well, I don't know about you, but I understand as a soul, I'm a creator, and what I focus my energy and attention on, I start to bring more about. I start thinking and feeling lack. Well, guess what? I'm going to start experiencing that for myself, and I assume that for other people in the experiencing part. So it was just very interesting And going through the seasons, and why like I said, I do appreciate winter, because it's like, with it being so cold outside, there is that natural tendency for me, speaking for myself here, to want to withdraw. And that's a very powerful word, withdraw. Because as a soul, I'm very expressive and expansing. But it's like with the winter, it's like I'm just contracting, and what it does physically with the muscles is it just starts to tense. I mean, the muscles tensing, I know there's like a survival mechanism, and there's a time and place in an event that there's like a fight or flight situation. It makes sense that the body would adapt and operate in certain ways because of that. I'm sure there's a reason behind that tightness. But we're never in a situation where we're experiencing extreme danger every day. So the muscle tightening that can come about from daily experiencing, I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware of those subtle things, because that's stress. And the body keeps the score and will store that stress. And if I take it and if I keep running it with it unconsciously, not aware, or even if I'm aware but I'm not doing something about it, there's a price to pay. There is no free lunch in the universe. So what I've come to learn is, okay, what's the best price I can pay that'll give me a bang for my buck? I'm not meaning that figuratively, spiritually, not quite literally. Although I'm a huge proponent of also, getting a bang for my buck for whatever it is that I invest in whatever I invest in financially. Sure. So going on the walk today really felt refreshing, and it really felt like it was definitely needed. Because like the seasons, it's like a reminder to me that there's a time and place for everything, and that there needs, for me, it's like I want to make sure that I don't put myself in a position where I'm stagnant with my energy. And that's really what can happen if I get so caught in the winter blues. Stagnation is one of the things I find that can happen from that with my energy. And all that will just bring about is just dis-ease, suffering. Again, all these things that aren't necessary. But it's so funny how my conditionings really feel hardwired to just really get in my own way, and how freaking frustrating that is. At least for me. But I have to remember, when I find myself frustrated, that it's all there for me. And that's a choice. That is a decision. And depending on what I decide, well, life will reflect back at me. And trust me when I say, when I've decided, hey, life is for me, there's a lot of proof I've had and what I've experienced to know that that is true. But again, the opposite, and like the crappy, all this XYZ, you name it, that can also be true as well too. But again, everybody has a choice. You have a choice. So that was a decision I made, and on my walk, I decided to go certain spots. And funny, interesting enough, I remember when it was like just fresh out the storm, it just hit the area. I had the After just being holed in for a couple of days, at some point, then I had to go out on my shift and went to the nearest trail on foot. And so I remember I was checking it out, and I remember I was experiencing fear at that point in time. And But now, when I was going outside and treading over areas where it was pretty much like slippery, frozen, like solid, hard snow, not the ones you can like turn into a snowball, mind you, to give you some context about the current situation. So, and it's very slippery and hazardous. But for me, I was just going through it with my headphones on, jamming the music, and I was just chilling at that point, you know? So just noticing that little shift for myself, where initially I was feeling a little bit like, I was getting worried. I'm out there. I'm like, oh shit, I hope I don't slip. Oh my God, I don't want to fall. And getting these thoughts in my head. These things where I'm having an experience where I'm experiencing that comfort. But then, even at that point, during that time when I went initially, because I was out there and I got myself exposed and used to it, my energy was able to shift. And I believe that carried over to just even me going out today. So I wasn't even tripping too much about the snow. I was aware, but I wasn't tripping. I wasn't like, oh my God, but making all these morals about this is going to happen. Oh my God, this, I'm going to fall, break my, whatever, XYZ. Help me. So I was just enjoying my walk and taking in the sights. I took some pictures and posted on my social media because I don't post enough. And I feel like it would always do me wonders to share even about the simplest things in life with people, you know? Um, and for me, I think, one of the key things for me is like, having said all this is part of why when on days like whether I haven't been outside for whatever the reason, be it a snow or even just it's a nice day out, but I just haven't been out as much lately. The key that I mentioned earlier that I'll bring back home to here is just to make sure I get back in my own flow. And that's a feeling that each of us have within ourselves that is our barometer that we need to dial into with more consistency because we're all face of life. We have to play the game, and part of the game is a routine. And to be successful in the routines, there needs to be flow. If there isn't, well, I don't think I have to explain much to tell you what that's like when there isn't. Just take a look at your down days and you understand perfectly what I'm talking about. But when I'm in the flow, think about those days think about your up days, when you've had highlights, when you're excited, you felt light, you felt bright, you felt connected to your childlike part. And those are, and looking at both sides of the coin, if you will, both extremes, the good and bad, they're good barometers, you know. And for me, it's a good reminder to keep things in simple perspective. Like, am I on track and living purposely, for example? And it's like all I have to do is just see how often I feel great and how often I don't feel great. And if I feel not so great more often, then well, that's a surefire indication like I need to shift something. So, and that's why that's the whole walking for me is part of my process and why I enjoy walking and why today was a breath of fresh air since it's been a while since I've been outside for a walk. Like I said, that snow, the cold, it's like, uh, which also I would equate with like, why I appreciate the winter and the transitions because, even like the growth, the expansion, that happens outside the comfort zone, you know? So another reason why being comfy is dangerous because we're fighting against if I get too comfy, I'm fighting against what my the soul in me innately what I desire, and that's the expansion and the evolution. I mean, that's part of why we're here, but that's genuinely a need of every single individual, in my opinion. I know this is a need for myself. We all desire that expansion. People may not realize it, but that's what I believe. And when there is an expansion, then there's that vibration of death. The pessimistic, the suffering kind. The ones that gets to the woes and the oh poor little me and all this stuff when we're more powerful and great than we realize. At least I come to always have to be reminded from time to time myself. So in today's episode, this is pretty much I just wanted to talk about that experience, and just really I think, a lot can be drawn forth talking about the simple things in life. As you can already tell if you're at this point of the episode, talking about my going for a walk out in the cold and with the snowy conditions out there, slippery conditions to add to that, you know. And on the topic of walking, I definitely recommend doing that. I definitely think it's so important to get some fresh air. Or I remember what I've heard it said in the gaming community when referring to people who play too much and they don't step outside to touch some grass. Although not possible right now at this point in time. Maybe in some areas where the snow has probably melted, because there are already some sections that are already showing significant melting. So there's major improvement definitely since then, but it's still out here. So I definitely think it's important to touch some grass, figuratively or literally, to smell some fresh air, because I think that's a need that we all have. And so as we're navigating through the winter blues, don't let them keep you down. If you feel this yearning or this desire to do something, and it may involve going outdoors, or maybe not. Maybe there's something inside that you've been putting off. The key is, like, what's that thing that makes you feel uncomfortable? Just the thought of like doing that or moving in that direction, and yet there's a part of you within that's like, but I want to go there. Or it's like this gentle pull, you know? This is like a moment for me of recognizing when I'm fighting my own intuitive senses, my intuitive knowing, my feelings, the impressions, fighting my own communication within me. To me, that's a detriment. I would not want that for anybody. No, 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 no. I've experienced it many times when I have ignored it. But that's part of the practice, it's just listening to myself. What do I feel deep down that I want to do? What I desire? What is my soul desire? But being aware of our intellectual nature, the part that's just there to organize, just to organize. But yet, if I allow my intellect part to just start to take the driver's seat, then fear will start. I may let fear drive my life, but what kind of life is lived if fear is the driver? Can one live a fulfilling life if fear is the driver, is the main driver? As I'm saying all that, it makes no sense. I call bullshit on that. That's a terrible concept. But to answer that for you, my friend, like, no, like, fear is not in the equation. But it's like getting past the threshold, going back to what I mentioned, what the cold at the beach, the discomfort, the temperatures. I would even add to this to bring it full circle. It's like fear. There is another side of fear. It's like, but I have to make that choice and tap into my inner courage and bravery to cut through and move towards the fears telling me, don't go, please don't do it, because they're going to be very convincing. And trust me, from my fear, my version of fear likes to nitpick all the details, because your boy here gets so worried over small things. Right? This is part of my warts. This is part of my ish. But I've had experiences where I've moved through that, because there's this part of me that I'm like, our feeling part, our intuitive center, the seat of our intuitive power, our feeling nature. That's where our power is. And when I've synced my intellect with my feeling part, that's when I've experienced moments of just complete fulfillment, and I just feel much more lighter, much more empowered, much more capable, and even more confident. And so I think I'll wrap it up here at this point of the episode, and just wanted to just share about that, and this is one of the many aspects of why I appreciate going for a walk, and why I'll always continue doing that. It's why I haven't been, because I haven't been cycling as much as I used to. Now it's just like it created more space for me to walk more. And I think everybody can benefit from some walking in their lives. So if there's any actions, or if you want anything out of this, I challenge you to go for a walk, go around your neighborhood, and set yourself a reasonable goal. Don't go too far, or don't try to commit to doing a marathon. I say that to say, because for me, my brain will just be like, if I set myself to do something, I'm always gotta take it to the extreme and go so freaking far. Oh, I gotta go from 0 to 100 quick. Boom! Ah! Chill, bro. Chill, bro. I gotta tell myself that often. Chill. Chill. That's what happens when I have so much energy flowing through me at times. I'm just like, it's so intense. And I can understand why some people take me, and why I've gotten the feedback from others like, Alvin, you're very extra. If you haven't gotten that sense, well, here you go. uh, this has been another episode of Spirit Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Zapeta, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.